Welcome, everyone, and thank you to Cheryl and Barbara. We're very fortunate this morning to get to hear all sorts of variations on some of Beethoven's theme this morning. But we'll begin our service with our gathering song, number 29, Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, God of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee, hail thee as the sun above. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the pain of doubt away. Giver of immortal gladness, fill us with the joy of day. All thy works with joy surround the earth and heaven reflect thy rays. Stars and planets sing around thee, center of unbroken praise. Field and forest, vale and mountain, blossoming meadow, flashing sea, chanting bird and flowing fountain, call us to rejoice in thee. Thou art giving and forgiving, ever blessing, ever blessed, wellspring of the joy of living, ocean depth of happy rest. Ever singing, march we onward, victors in the midst of strife. Joyful music lifts us onward in the triumph song of life.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Deborah Casey, and I have been coming to this congregation for about 2 years now. I joined the congregation to try and find people of action and compassion, and I have certainly found that here and so much more. I would like to welcome you to the online service of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. We're so glad that you joined us this morning, and you're in for a treat with all this Beethoven. Although we are socially distanced from each other, we are not socially disengaged. And whether you are well versed in the technology of teleconferencing, which I am not, or this is your first venture, we welcome you. For those of you who are new among us or reconnecting with us, we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat box as you feel comfortable. We would love to hear more about you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, whatever your theological stance, whatever your heritage, whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. You can learn more about us on our website and our Facebook page, and we encourage you to share those and reach out to others who might be isolated during this time and might benefit from a connection with our loving community. There are a few announcements this morning. If you took one of the Mitten Tree gift things from our Mitten Tree, the drop-off today is from 12 to 1. And that be sure that your gift has the name or the reference for the giftee on it clearly, either a card or a label. There's going to be a racial justice forum workshop on the Black Voices of Unitarian Universalism, and that will be held Monday, December 14th from 6:30 to 7:30. And you can reach out to Chris Halfer for materials and more information. And don't miss our Zoom holiday concert. It's going to be spectacular. We're going to celebrate both visual and performing artists of our congregation, and that's on December 20th at 3 p.m. So be sure and attend that. You might also have noticed that there are captions running at the bottom of your screen. We do have captioning now, subtitles. If you don't see these and you would like to enable them, you should go to the More button. On my screen, it's at the bottom. It has 3 little dots. and you can click show subtitles, and then you'll be able to get the captions at the bottom of the screen. After our service, we invite you to stay and participate in the breakout groups and make deeper connections with each other. And again, we welcome you to the UU Congregation of Danbury, where all are welcome in the spirit of compassion, inquiry, and service.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Deb. I'm so glad you're all here with us this morning. I feel this way every Sunday, I'm sure, but it always feels to me like, wow, there's so much to hold this morning, and this morning especially so. Today, we lift ourselves out of December 2020 for an hour and time travel to another era through the ways that music and story can transport us to completely different periods of human existence. Thank goodness. We also celebrate the 8 days and nights of Hanukkah this morning, another miracle story from ages past. So savor this hour together while we set aside the constant task management and worries of our daily lives these days and soak in some element of timelessness through melodies, stories, and prayers that connect us as human beings across all ages and nations. Come, let us join in this sacred time together, this time for regrounding, remembering, reflecting, and reconnecting. Join me in bringing a chalice or a candle near you. As the wick burns down in mine, it takes longer to light each week. So I went ahead and lit it already so that the flame is burning and inspires you to light your own chalice or candle near you. This flame that signifies the enduring strength of our Unitarian Universalist faith and the light within each and every one of us. Join me in our chalice lighting words. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life.
Good morning. It is good to be together. If there are children and youth who are in the room but not near the screen, I encourage you to come over now, or you can just stay close where you can listen to today's Time for All Ages, which is a musical meditation that we can experience on this day when the Reverend Heather has invited us to celebrate the birthday of the musician Beethoven. I invite you to get comfortable where you are for that meditation. And while you're getting comfortable, I want to make sure, and before we say the children's affirmation, I want to make sure that all children and youth are invited to come to a special Zoom room after the service for some time together to chat and share joys and sorrows and try a spiritual practice. If you're a child or youth wondering how to get to this Zoom room, the link was sent to your adults this morning. I also look forward to seeing any of the children and youth who helped drop off mitten tree gifts today. I will be waiting for you with candy canes. And finally, the Reverend Heather has asked me to remind all of you, adults included, that our Christmas Eve service in a couple of weeks will include setting up creches or nativity scenes, as we won't be having a pageant. So if you have a creche or nativity scene at home, you can use that. But if you don't, you're invited to make a do-it-yourself creche, a DIY creche, from whatever you have on hand. You can use Lego people and Legos, or Playmobil figures, dolls, stuffed animals, paper dolls that you find online to print out. Who knows? I don't know what creative options that you'll come up with. Maybe even chess set pieces, whatever you want. You might also consider the creative choices you'll make about the telling of your story, the creche scene that you create. So for example, you might ask, how will gender, race, disability, and ability show up in my scene? Now would be a good time to start gathering things together and figuring out what materials you will want to have with you during the Christmas Eve service for the building of your nativity scene. Let's say together the children's affirmation. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. In the spirit of meditation. The ancient Greek philosopher Pythagoras taught that the universe was composed entirely of numbers, and numbers corresponded to music. So the entire universe, all of reality, including us, was composed of numbers and music. The 7 planets of the ancient world each resonated a frequency outward into the universe, a different note on the musical scale.
Jerry had to reboot his computer, Sierra Marie. So while he's coming on, Cheryl or Barbara, could one of you play an ascending scale for us?
I'm back.
Oh, great. Okay.
Perfect.
Never mind.
We're waiting for the ascending scale.
Yes.
So I'm just going to bring us back to the meditation with the last few sentences. The 7 planets of the ancient world each resonated a frequency outward into the universe, a different note on the musical scale. Their music was not something we heard audibly, but their cosmic vibration, their resonance could impact us, as all music could. Pythagoreans believed that music purified and nourished our souls, spiritually healthy in the same way exercise and nutrition does for our bodies. What music do you need to purify or nourish your soul right now?
Do you need a peppy tune to make you smile and dance? Perhaps you need a love ballad to help you celebrate the love in your life. Or do you need a sad song to speak to you about loss in your life? Maybe you need a dirge to help you grieve and mourn. Or do you need a happy song to help you celebrate something? A cacophony of noise to rattle you into a new... Perhaps you need something calm, like a lullaby, to bring you peace and serenity.
As we enter into a brief silence now, I invite you to consider the song that is speaking to you at this moment. Feel its resonation within you and imagine its resonation outward in all directions, resonating with those next to you, perhaps in your physical space and certainly in this Zoom room, and the people nearest to them, outward until it fills the room. connecting you with everyone else from the song of your soul today. Amidst the heartache, uncertainty, collective perseverance, and deep pain of this present moment in our country, we also experience all our own individual joys and sorrows. Now's the time for sharing in the chat those personal milestones that are lifting up your spirit or weighing it down today.
I'm Jeremy Stein. I'm the Executive Director of Connecticut Against Gun Violence. I'm also a congregant, the husband of Yvonne Reddy Stein, father of Serena and Zachary. I'm here to talk to you about the events that happened 8 years ago tomorrow, when the unimaginable happened in the most unlikely of places. 28 people were killed, including 20 elementary school children and six educators. And every year I struggle as what to say, what can I say, what can we say about what happened? And since Sandy Hook, close to 300,000 people have been killed in the United States by guns. It's about 100 people per day. Over 40,000 people this year alone. And in Connecticut, about 2,056 people have died from a gunshot in the last 10 years. And this year, gun shootings in our cities have become just as concerning as the pandemic. And in places like New Haven, the number of gun homicides have doubled this year. Black and brown communities have been hit the hardest. That is the simple truth. And we weep for Sandy Hook, but today cannot just be about Sandy Hook. Tomorrow cannot just be about Sandy Hook. We must also tell the story of the 180 other people who have died from gun violence this year in Connecticut. We must put a stop to this now. Tomorrow at 9 o'clock, CAGV will be honoring the lives lost at Sandy Hook on a Facebook live stream, and I'll put the information in the chat. But we also are going to be honoring the lives lost in Connecticut this year. But vigils are not enough. We must commit to action. The cries of never again and not one more have gone unanswered by the failure to pass even one single federal law. Gun sales have doubled in some places due to the pandemic. The crisis is so pervasive that our children are known as the lockdown generation. However, the absence of federal gun law reform, despite the passion of leadership of legislators like those in Connecticut's congressional delegation, does not render us powerless. We must remember that each of us has the power to create change, especially at the state level. With the hard work of so many of you that have taken the pain of Sandy Hook and turned it into action. As a result of turning tragedy into advocacy, we have achieved remarkable things in Connecticut by passing some of the strongest gun laws and giving us one of the lowest gun death rates in the nation. And perhaps with the new president, yes, with the new president, I said that, you can all clap. And perhaps with the new president and possibly a new Congress, we will see this change. But if they won't act, then we will do it, state by state by state, until we end gun violence. And we will lead by example right here in Connecticut. We must not just grieve for the victims of gun violence. We must honor their lives with action. Each and every one of us must work to create the world we want our children to live in. Let us all be the change. And please join us with the words of today's offering. In the spirit of compassion and service, we dedicate these, our offerings.
Now let's see.
Thank you to Cheryl and Barbara and Jeremy. Thank goodness for music and community, which helps us grapple with the tragedies of this world and helps remind us of the beauty of this world still abiding, even right alongside our grief, and also helps us persevere and feel the spirit and the strength within us, moving us forward into each new day and what that new day calls upon us to do. Especially amidst all the stressful news of these days, it has been a joy for me this past week to dive deeply into the life, writings, and music of Ludwig van Beethoven. There are so many treasure troves online these days. It can be quite a series of rabbit holes. Even Beethoven's relatively humble birthplace has been turned into a museum. In some places, I've seen it referred to as a shrine, and you can now tour it online. Here is the link in the chat, and get lost in details like Beethoven's daily routine, hour by hour, viewing the ear trumpets he had made for himself in his 40s, and the death mask made of his face just hours after he died. These things and so many more details are available for you to go down that Beethoven rabbit hole if you want to this week in his honor and memory. Ludwig van Beethoven, named after his grandfather, was born on December 16th or 17th in 1770 in Bonn, Germany. Reading and learning more about the details of his childhood and upbringing has revealed so much to me about how differently we think about childhood and education these days. For example, I was given a choice when I was in second grade. I could have and play the violin, or I could continue with the brownies toward becoming a Girl Scout. It was probably a financial decision for my mother, and I remember her giving me the option after school one day in the car. She'd pick me up from school and we were discussing what would be my choice. But it was probably also an opportunity for me to decide what mattered more to me. And that's, I think, why I remember it as like a really big decision. Well, that right there is just one of the roughly 5,273,600 or more ways that Ludwig van Beethoven's and my lives have differed. He was never given a choice about being a musician. From his 4th or 5th year, writes biographer Jan Swafford, music was beaten into him. It was misery at times, especially in his youngest years. But whether he chose it or not, music had been from early on what his life was about. There are really hundreds, if not more, hundreds or more incredible stories in this biography by Jan Swafford that is over 900 pages, and I have not read every one of them, even though my oldest child was every morning asking me, did you stay up and finish that book last night? But I did find several that I'm excited to share with you today. Once Ludwig's father, himself a mediocre court musician, observed that his son was quite talented. He determined that he would make him into the more profitable musician he had not been able to be. And from a very early age, Ludwig was assigned to one teacher and then another, almost more like what we would think of as an apprenticeship. He didn't take piano lessons so much as live alongside these professional musicians who were assigned to be his teachers, beginning to substitute for them in their gigs, learn the methods of correspondence and securing patronage from the wealthy, and modeling early compositions in the style of his mentors. He was very much brought up in the shadow of Mozart, and in his early years followed Mozart's path as closely as he could, even in his composition style at first. At 21 years old, Beethoven left Bonn for Vienna, considered the place to be in terms of learning from the greats, including Amadeus Mozart and Joseph Haydn, who had preceded him there. He was studying counterpoint, how harmonies are woven together, the violin and vocal composition, all while playing piano for the gatherings of Viennese nobles. He went on to compose, stage his first symphony, and teach piano to wealthy Viennese families. What makes Beethoven's story rise above so many of his contemporaries was, at the time, his music, the emotionality of his music, his risk-taking. He was the first to include the voice in a symphonic arrangement, for example. But I'm convinced that what causes Beethoven's name to last over time is his personal story, his struggle with the onset of hearing loss and eventual deafness, his romantic longings that were never matched by another, always unrequited, often because he aspired to marry some young woman who was of a higher station in class than he was. And his, what we called in the 1990s, dysfunctional family. And now I think what we understand more and more to be simply human. His life was messy, as ours are. We can relate to him somehow through the stories of his life, even though his art is so transcendent. Beethoven was only 27 years old when he first experienced a complete loss of hearing for a few days, and then his hearing came back, but it would come and go. While his hearing returned somewhat after an initial frightening episode, what he heard was now accompanied by a maddening chorus of squealing, buzzing, and humming that raged in his ears day and night. Writes biographer Jan Swafford, medicine was half a century or more away from being able to treat or understand a disability like his. So he was just constantly going to a series of doctors who would prescribe a whole range of things that none of which helped and some of which actually caused harm. In what turned out to be his last few months of life, he was still creating and editing his compositions, even as he became ill, always hoping until his final days that he would be able to resume his work. For example, he wrote to a close friend on March 18th in 1827, "A whole sketched symphony, the 10th, is in my desk. Also a new overture or even something else. Never have I undertaken a work with such ardor as will now be displayed. May it only please God to restore me soon again to health." He wrote that on March 18th. He died on March 26th at 5:45 p.m. He was 56 years old. This past week, I have been a little Beethoven obsessed, our 8-year-old daughter would especially tell you. But it's been fun to observe the way that delving into a topic in the presence of my family while we're all together all the time at home has brought them along with me and given us something else to connect with and connect and chuckle about, besides just kvetching about what we're going to eat for dinner or complaining about something else the coronavirus is keeping us from being able to go out and do. For example, in Beethoven's time, it was common for working families to take their children out of school altogether around the age of 11 or 12 and apply them to the family trade. And such was the case with Ludwig van Beethoven. So even though many among us will have heard him been called a genius, perhaps even a mathematical genius, because of the way that music and math are often correlated, like they were in the musical meditation we listened to earlier. In fact, Beethoven never learned math beyond addition and subtraction. Until the end of his life, in order to multiply 60 times 52, for example, he would write 60 down on a paper in a column 52 times and add it all up. Such was the laser focus on music that his upbringing involved, and the complete exclusion of all other life skills, relationship building skills. Like, that was just not part of his education at all. So keep up the math practice at home, kids. You'll soon be better at math than Beethoven. Another fun way to share with others in your presence or at a distance is to peruse this compilation from the New York Times of 5 minutes that will make you love Beethoven. Jerry's going to post the link in the chat. 16 different people write a paragraph about their favorite Beethoven sample and why. Even just putting these on as you clean up around the house can diversify your household soundtrack. And that's something I was reflecting on from my upbringing that I'm so grateful for. There was all kinds of music on in the house when I was growing up. For me, that mix of music that I grew up immersed in and surrounded by, and that was just on in the background, has broadened my whole life perspective and my ability to understand references and simply enjoy a wide expanse of stories and cultures. I was just sharing earlier this week with my family, not for the first time, I'm sure, but how as a child growing up, we went to the Oregon Symphony. My parents had a subscription sometimes, some years, and just for the two of them. But if my mother didn't want to go, then I would go with my stepfather. And our seats were way up high in the nosebleed section of the Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall. But I'll never forget, and I was thinking about this because of reading that Beethoven was the first to include voice in his symphonic arrangements. I'll never forget when we went and heard Holst's The Planets, and we were up in the nosebleed section when there is a part where I forget which planet is orchestrated by a whole choir of voices singing like from the ethereal beyond, except because when we were in the nosebleed seats, they were right behind us. And I was like so excited to turn around and see the singers right there in the dark singing to represent Uranus or Neptune or something. And I'll just never forget that. So those experiences can be so memorable for us that tap into certain aspects of music and song throughout our lives. These days, we can also never have too many stories of people who have persevered through difficulty, who have found ways to share themselves and their particular gifts, even while coping with imperfect families, unrequited love, and extraordinary life challenges. In this year of 2020 that is finally coming to a close, we have lost so many people close to us and in the public eye for a whole slew of reasons, but COVID especially. And COVID has taken a number of beloved musicians, singer-songwriter John Prine, jazz pianists Mike Longo and Ellis Marsalis Jr., so many. And I was scrolling through lists of people who have died this year. looking for the musicians, there are more than I could find there in the fine print. So I invite you to write names in the chat of other musicians who have died this year, who are on your mind or heart. What I'm mindful of this morning, and my heart is full of this morning, is that the music does endure. It lingers, it lifts us, moving us forward almost against our will sometimes, because that's what there is still to do. Listen, breathe, dance, move, sing, and carry on. The music and the stories behind and within the music endure. Beethoven was almost completely deaf when he composed his final and most infamous Ninth Symphony, which ends with the Ode to Joy. When UUCD's youth group journeyed to Boston in October 2019 and visited, among other churches, the Arlington Street Church on the Boston Common, music director Mark David Buckles passionately shared the story of Beethoven's incredible work while living with a disability for which there was very little support in his time. And then Mark David took us up to the bell tower and played Ode to Joy for us on the bells. And here is a snippet of that for you all. The music does endure. It lingers. It lifts us, moving us forward, almost against our will, because that's what there is still to do. Listen, breathe, dance, move, create, and carry on. May it be so forevermore. Join me now in taking a deep breath together. Find that meditative place again within you. Shift your body so that you might be more present to what you are feeling on this day, in this moment. We honor and celebrate today the way that music can be timeless, can help us to transcend the concerns of our present day and remember the ageless concerns of humanity. And tap into joy once more, into the vibrations of human creation and connection, and remind us of what is glorious, what is possible, what is sublime. Every afternoon, Ludwig van Beethoven went for an extended walk, a small notebook in his pocket for jotting down his ideas. On this day, when hopefully after this morning's fog clears, we're supposed to have some decently warm for mid-December and partly sunny weather, I encourage you to get out for such a walk, or to think about in what ways you can give your soul a chance to breathe and think creatively and expansively. Beethoven was always trying to get in touch with what was timeless. He was always trying to push music from being a source of entertainment to something that was lasting and ageless. When do you listen for what is stirring within you and what has been wanting to be voiced throughout your life? How do you allow yourself the spaciousness to feel, to be with whatever feelings are arising in you today? May you be reminded today and always that we are all beautifully imperfect human beings, each with our own stories, our own art forms, our own journeys and challenges. Give your creative self a chance to add light, to add joy, to experience and create moments of wonder as we'll hear Reverend Joanna Lupkin invite us to do in a moment, especially during this month of the longest nights. May the miracles of ages past continue to inspire us all. May the miracles of ages past continue to inspire us all. May it be so, blessed be, and amen. Join me now in singing along with Jerry, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the head, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Good morning. Last night, families around the world lit Hanukkah candles, lighting 3 candles for the 3rd night of the festival. So I bring this morning the practice of lighting candles to this Unitarian Universalist congregation, where many of us, like myself, have a Jewish background or want to honor the Jewish holidays. The rabbis of the Talmud, well, they argued a lot, and one of the things they argued over was how one should light the Hanukkah lights. One rabbi and his school of thought that each night you should add an extra light. That on the first night you light 1 candle or lamp, and the second night you light 2, and so on. Another school of thought said, no, you should start with 8 and get fewer and fewer as it goes on. So from 8 candles and lamps or lights to 7 and 6. Well, as you may have guessed, the school of thought about adding light won over time, that's what we do. And the rationale is that we should be increasing light. We should be increasing joy in the world. We should be bringing more light to darkness. I'm taking that to heart this year, that in a year where things have been hard, let's add light. Let's add joy. Let's add wonder. So whatever that looks like for you, may this be a season of increasing light and joy, warmth and connection during long nights. I'll sing the Hanukkah blessings in Hebrew, the first 2 blessings over the candle, and the 3rd for the first time in a year where one does something. And since this is the first Sunday this year where we're lighting Hanukkah candles together, we'll sing that one as well. And following that, we'll say the English translation. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu le'adlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa nisim lavoteinu, bayamim hahem ba'azman hazeh. hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Amen. Blessed are you, source of all, who brings moments of holiness to our lives through the ritual of lighting the Hanukkah lights. Blessed are you, source of all, who brings our attention to miracles from ages past to this very moment. Blessed are you, source of all, who has given us life, sustained us, and brought us to this very moment. And let us say, Amen. Happy Hanukkah.
Please join me now in our words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. I hope you'll join me in hymn 221, Light One Candle, which was written by Peter Yarrow some years ago. Light one candle for the Maccabee children, give thanks that their light didn't die. Light one candle for the pain they endured when their right to exist was denied. Light one candle for the terrible sacrifice justice and freedom demand. And light one candle for the wisdom to know when the peacemaker's time is at hand. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears. Light one candle for the wisdom we need to never become our own foe. Light one candle for those who are suffering the pain we learned so long ago. Light one candle for all we believe in, let anger not tear us apart. And light one candle to bring us together with peace as the song in our heart. Don't let the light out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears. What is the memory that's valued so highly? We keep it alive in that flame. What's the commitment to those who have died when we cry out they've not died in vain? Have we come this far, always believing justice would somehow prevail? This is the burden, this is the promise, this is why we will not fail. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears. One more time. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears. And then Peter Yarrow's ending is, don't let the light go out, sung 3 times. Don't let the light go out, don't let the light go out.
Woohoo! Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, all of you. Don't let your light go out, even if your sound is, mediocre as it's coming through your speakers. I predict Santa bringing lots of people speakers this year and lots of multi-gen sound check improvement activities online. May we all keep figuring out ways to stay connected, even with all the technology learning curves that it's requiring of all of us. May this marvelous tune that Nancy just sang be just one of the melodies floating through your mind and heart in the coming days and nights. May you go into this week ahead nourished by music, knowing that even with all the tragedies we honor and commemorate and observe and witness together, we are buoying each other up to address what needs to be addressed, to take action, to speak out, to keep singing, to keep our shoulder to the wheel of the work that needs to be done in this world. We hope you'll linger for fellowship time after the service and the other activities of this congregation that follow. But when you do leave this community today, may you go feeling held in love, committed to peace, and more determined than ever to continue in your and our efforts for greater justice for all in this world. For those of you who signed up to contribute to the Mitten Tree gift drop-off, thank you. And remember that that drop-off time starts at noon today at UUCD. For now, savor the postlude with me, stretch as you need, and then join us for small group connection during the fellowship time.
I was talking with mute on. Transition to fellowship time. Yes, we will now be invited to join a breakout room, and I encourage you to share and connect with folks that you might not otherwise have had the opportunity to connect with. We'll be in our breakout rooms for about 18 minutes, give or take. And then you'll get a warning and then another little warning that it's time to come back. And we will end with a short reading that relates to Hanukkah and the sharing of light. You'll be invited to join a breakout room any minute now.
Second. Hey there, Chris is here. Joanne, Margaret, Marianne, have you guys gotten your pop-ups to go to your breakout rooms?